In this exercise, we're going to create a pawn for a chess game using TinkerCad, a 3D design program that's you can find and should have signed into already. That's online. Okay, to begin, we're going to create a new design. So I want you to do that. But before that, let me tell you about the pawn. We're going to call this project a precision pawn. That just means that we're going to make it exactly 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters wide at its base, and only 35 millimeters high, and to look like this one. So let's begin. We'll click on Create New Design, and the web page will go to a blank work plane, and we should find a panel over here. If it did open up without any objects or any shapes that you can use to build your pawn, your shapes to use. Now I've clicked mine, and my program's running a little slow, and I made the mistake of clicking it twice, which closed it even before it opened. So now we can begin. So in here we have various shapes that we can put together, including shapes that are called, or I call them negative shapes, but this is this creates a hole that's either square or cylinder. We'll use that for other shapes as well. To begin, we're going to use this pawn. We'll click it once and move it out to the center. I like to try to line it up between these boulder grid lines. So I've dropped it there. I'll tell you that this pawn is right now 20 millimeters by 20 by 5 high. If I click on the corner here, one of its controls, it'll tell me that it's 20 by 20. I'm going to use the mouse, the roller on the mouse, to zoom in. And as I zoom in, it cuts off the bottom. I think I can So we'll move this to be centered, and if I zoom in, oh, by the way, I clicked on the roller, I pushed the roller down, and by doing that I can kind of pan around. That's what they call this movement, is panning. It's where you can move the whole thing. If I click on the right mouse button and hold it down and move my mouse, I can orbit, which lets me look around from side to side, including look underneath. And as I look underneath, I'll roll the roller, click the roller down, pan down. I can see that this square, which represents this shape on the surface, is not lined up. So I'm going to try using my arrow keys, because I think I have better control than the mouse. Now it's centered. Good. I'm also going to close this. This gives us lots of options for our parts, but I'm just going to close it for now so it's out of the way. And our torus is there. Oh, I wanted to also verify that it was 5 high, and by clicking on it, it is 5. So in the making of this pawn, we really don't want to change our torus. It needs to stay the way we got it from over here. Now, to give our pawn some height, I'm going to get the cone, and if I look for it, there it is, it's purple. I'll click on it and bring it over. You don't have to drag it over, you can just click on it and it'll show up. So this cone needs to be, well, let's move it in place first, then we'll change its size. If I line up the black lines, it'll be centered, and now I don't want this little skirt thing sticking out. I want the cone to only show, or the cylinder, the curve to only show up. So I need to make it smaller. I need to take off probably 2 on each side. That's 4. So if I click this and I make it 16 by 16, let's try that. I click the control once. I type in here. I'll type 16. I don't have to press enter or anything. I just click the other box and type 16 and click away, and it takes those shapes. Well, I've taken 4 off this side and this side, but I need to center it again. So I'll press arrow twice that way, twice this way, and oh, I can look at this and see that it is centered. Good. So we now have the beginnings of our pawn. I also want to make my overall pawn 35 millimeters high. So if I click this control for its height and type in 34, it will be 1 millimeter short of the top. Now that time I did press enter. Let's add another cone right beside it, and this cone we're going to turn upside down. Before we do it, though, I think I'll I think I'll get it to be the size I want it to be. So I'll click on the corner again, and I'll type here an 8, and on this one an 8, and I'll click away. And this one, I think I'll make it 25 high, 25. And there it is. Now, I want you to notice the view that I have of it. I have it so that I'm looking across the plane, and when I do that, I get to see this control, and it's easy to see. When the view is this way, or any other way that's looking down, it's hard to find that control to turn it. In fact, it can be confusing which one does what. So I'll make sure it's in this view, just to make it easier for myself. By clicking anywhere in the region of this little red arrow, I can change the orientation to be at any angle that moves by, oh, I forget if it's 1 degree or 15 degrees. I want to make it 180. So sometimes it's hard to get 180. If you move your mouse down lower, you have much more control to get it to be 180. Or you can just let go before you do anything else, click inside that and type 180. And press enter. And now it is. Okay, good. I'm going to move that cone to be in the center of the other cone, and I'm just going to get it close with the mouse, because that's all I can do. The mouse, it's if you think about it, it's moving on a two-dimensional plane. That's your table, whatever, the mouse pad, and the screen is also two-dimensional. It's just flat. But we have a three-dimensional drawing we're trying to make, and the computer program has to interpret what you actually want it to do. If I look at this, I can see that this is centered, and if I use the right mouse button to flip it upside down, I'll zoom in with the roller, and I'll click the roller down to move it over, and I can look at these corners and see that it is, or even this, I can see that it is centered. Okay, well, good. Let's continue by adding the parts to the top. I'm going to click on the sphere and bring it over and click it right beside. Now this, I think I want the top of my pond to be 10 by 10 by 10. I have to have 3 numbers because I'm changing the width, its length, and its height. All by 10. And there it is. Now I can bring this over and put it inside, but if I put it inside here, maybe where I can't see it again, I'll leave it right beside it. I want to raise this up. Well, everything that we've been doing so far has either been sliding it in place or flipping it upside down. So now I'm going to show you how to move things up and down. This black arrow will let us move it up and down. If I drag this up, this is, well, if this is a 10 millimeter sphere and I raise it up 25 millimeters, that means the top's going to be at 35. Well, that's my goal. That's where I want it to be. But that's not the only way I can tell if it's exactly 35 millimeters. I can also, let me zoom in a little, and I'll lower it down. If I lower it down there, I noticed, I'll click away, a little point is sticking out. Well, that's the top of my cone. And if I center it, I can just barely see the top of that cone sticking out. Well, that's 1 millimeter lower. So if I grab this and move it up, oh, there's another way to move it up and down besides grabbing the black arrow, and that is holding the control key and pressing the up arrow. So now it should be 35 high. Well, I know I want to make a collar around this, and I want it to be around 10 millimeters, so can't I just copy this? And if I right click on it, okay, nothing happens doing that. So what else is there? Over here, there's this symbol for copy, but it also says Control C. Well, I'm going to try the Control C. Control C. Well, it looks like nothing happened. Well, I have faith that Control C copied it. So if I click over here for paste, Control V. I'm going to try Control V. Oh, and now I have a second one. So with that done, I have 2 of them. Now this I want to be a small donut. So I'm going to make it 2 millimeters high, and I'll press enter. So now I'll slide that in place. If I slide it over, I think it's where it's supposed to be. If I use that right mouse button and spin it around, that seems to do it. Oh, but look at that. That's too high. So I'll try that Control arrow and lower it down. There. Well, that seems to fit. Okay, but I think I want it to be a little thicker. I'll click on this and I'll make it 3 millimeters. 3. That did it. Well, that looks good. All right. I think, except if you send this pawn, you and everyone else in class, how will I know it's yours? Because our goal is to make it precise. We want all our pawns to have the same heights and the same width and be built the same way. Let's put initials on the bottom of our pawn. Okay, to do that, I'll zoom out a little bit and click on this and add text. Now, these come in really big so we can see them, but that's too big. So I want you to click this center control and make this 1 millimeter high. There, we did that. And then we'll grab this control and just, I'm just going to make them smaller. Well, I tried. Let me try again. There we are. Now I can make them smaller. And I'll put them right here for now. Let's change the letters. And those letters can be changed under the properties of that shape. So I'll open this up, and where it says text, T-E-X-T, I'll select those. And you can select them and press delete, or you can go to the end and backspace. I know a lot of you like to do that. And then we'll put initials. I'll just use these initials for now. And it's set. I'll minimize this and we'll zoom in. Well, these initials, if I flip this upside down, these initials are going to be upside down and backwards. And we should fix that before we make them stick to the bottom of our pawn. So to turn them upside down and backwards, I'll click on it, this control, this black control, and I'll pull it all the way through to the other side. Well, now from this perspective it's reading backwards, but if we flip our pawn upside down, now they won't be backwards. I'll do one more thing just to make it look better. I'll flip them around upside down here at 180, and I'll look one more time. Now they look okay. In fact, now that I'm upside down, I'll just grab those initials and put them in under our pawn. I want you to zoom in and use the roller to center it, zoom in again, so that you can see where your pawn actually touches the edges, because we don't want the pawn to have the initials stick out. And by the way, they're not going to be red, or they're not going to be like this. We have to actually switch these to be a hole. So click on this gray over here while the initials are selected to make it a hole. And looks like these are going to touch the edge. So I'm going to make my initials not quite as tall. And can I move them up? If I move them up, it moves up one whole square. Well, that's what it's supposed to do, moving 1 millimeter at a time. But I think I need to move it a ½ millimeter. So down here, this is where it snaps to grid. That means it snaps every time it moves. I'm going to change this to be 0.5 millimeter, a ½ millimeter at a time. So now it'll snap every ½ millimeter. So, and I'm going to quit using the mouse because it goes all over. I'm going to use the arrow key. Oh, and now it's a ½ millimeter. If I zoom in, on this side, I'll click the initials again. If I zoom in, can I see? Well, click away. I just don't want this to cut through, because it'll leave a gash in the side of my pawn. If I make my pawn or my initials not as tall, let's make sure I click my initials. And there they are. I'll grab this control and I'll move it down. There, then I can make them a little wider. I think this is good. All right, I'm done with this. I'm going to select everything and see what it looks like. Well, it turns out that if I were to print this, I would end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different parts, because mathematically this drawing is just 6 different parts. To make it one part to be 3D printed, I have to select everything and group it. So I'll select everything and I'll click this control, which will group it, or Control G. Now when I do that, it's going to make it hopefully all one part. And the way I can tell it's all one part is it's all one color. Oh, by the way, when it prints, it won't print blue unless you put it on a printer that has blue filament. But that's for another lesson. Okay, so now my pawn is complete. If I flip it upside down, I can see my initials are carved into the bottom. That's kind of cool. And I'm ready to export. For us, we will export as Epic Amor. No, that's the name. That's confusing. I need you to change the name so I know that this is your pawn. So click on this name one time and change it to be, we'll start with your teacher's initial. So I'll put a T for the teacher's initial. You'll put the first initial of your teacher's last name first, then a space, and then what it is, P-A-W-N. I do it this way so when I see all of them come in, I can sort them by teacher and by project. And then I want your name to be at the end. And please capitalize to make it look nice. You worked hard on this, and I want this to look good. Okay, now with the name corrected, we are ready to export. So I'll click this button over here that says export. And the way we prepare to print is we use STL files. So we're going to export this as an STL. Now, depending on your class year that you grabbed, a shared folder to save it in. And I have one here as well. And it looks like you don't get to see it, but I'm going to click Save As. There it is. And we need to have a different folder. So your folder, mine isn't visible. We'll just click Save. So you need to save yours in something that says exclamation 3D 2029. Okay, and we're done. Oh no, we're not done, because this drawing that you've created, it hasn't been saved. The only way that anything you create here will be saved and recorded so that you can come back and see it again or edit it or change it is if you go back to the TinkerCad desktop. So I'm going to click this icon, the TinkerCad icon, and actually I think they call this the dashboard, the beginning of the program, where you can see all of your different drawings and also have other projects, which again isn't for another lesson. And there is our new one. Good. Now we're done. Hopefully you'll see your pawn printed soon.